Welcome, everyone, to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past shows are podcasts. You can find them at ArtistFirst.com. We welcome your email and questions and comments. Hit us up at dj@artistfirst.com. Now here they are, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Thank you very much, Z-Man. And I'm Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret.
Margaret, and it is random quote night here on the Soul of the Everyman.
Mm-hmm.
Aren't you lucky? Well, occasionally we have to have poetry night, and occasionally we have to have random quote night. And so tonight is not poetry night. So it's definitely random quote night. And tonight's random quote is number 27. You can just interpolate from that, number 27.
Mm.
Remember that, I forget what it was, but it was like a series of it was like a skit, and the whole skit was basically references to numbers, and everybody knew what every phrase was. So you would just say number 1, number 7, it would go back and they'd laugh, the big joke. So anyway, number 27 is not funny, but this is a quote which I guess you should read. Let's start off with the quote.
Alrighty. Forget about your life situation and pay attention to your life. Your life situation exists in time. Your life is now. Your life situation is mind stuff. Your life is real. This is Eckhart Tolle.
Your life is real. And, situation is something that we all find ourselves in. And it is very easy to confuse your life with your situation. And I think there's a point, Margaret, when if you're going along through life and you're getting dragged from situation to situation, where you start to realize that. I think the way it first maybe occurs, I'll speak for myself, the way it first maybe occurs to you is that as your situations kind of build and become perhaps overwhelming, you start to see a certain vein of the absurd, of the surreal, of like, this isn't life. This is just a whole bunch of random nonsense, or it's a play. Shakespeare said, all the world is a stage and we are but players upon it. And he was really, I think, commenting in essence upon this, that what we live in here, our situation, is really a stage. It's full of props, and it's full of scenarios and people who walk onto the stage to play a particular role, and you're seduced into it if you aren't careful, if you're just kind of treating it as though it was all very, very important and very serious. You get sucked right in to the play.
Right. You are. If you think of a play, you have a stage, which is a contained box, and the audience is sitting in front. And it's like watching a screen now,
right,
where it's all this two-dimensional story that's being played out for you. And a good drama draws you in. You begin to become curious and care about the story and about the characters, etc., etc. But when you draw back and just look at what this is, you realize it's all staged. And what does this have to do with me unless I decide to take it in?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that most people become confused over, because being drawn into the drama usually means that there's something there that you identify with, or you either sympathize with or feel very compassionate about. But it's not you. It is an unfolding of a story before your eyes that you can relate to, but not identify with. And that awareness is key. You can relate to the story because we as human beings were meant to relate to other things. I mean, you can't give directions unless you have a point of start to relate to, and then we give out directions. We relate to other people, but that doesn't mean that you are the other person. So it's being aware of that. You can look at it in terms of, well, isn't that interesting? There's different aspects to that particular relationship that that person had that is unlike the relationship I had. Just giving space for other people's experiences.
Yeah, I would like to go back a little to the beginning. What you said, the whole idea of it being a drama,
Mm-hmm.
and when you are drawn into a drama and into a book or into a story, you do. We are sort of almost wired, if you will, to identify with character. And then some people will find themselves profoundly changed by the story. But what I'm trying to get to is that when you identify with character, when you then imbue character, that's character, you start to live the role. And the thing about a role is that you are constrained. You are not only just identified, but you are limited. Because your character, how many times, let me just abstract this, how many times in a situation have you felt that you just didn't have any choice? You had to do this or you had to do that. Because you've gotten so deeply into the character, the role that you're having to play, the cog in the machine, if you will, that you're embodying, that you don't have any more freedom. You can't make a different choice. This is not the truth of it, but this is what people feel like. Well, A did this and C did that and G did this and I had to do that. I didn't have any other choice, and yet there's a certain internal angst, let's say, or internal disquiet that you say to yourself, well, who am I? You get disconnected from this, this in this situation. Like, why am I here? Why is this happening to me? Why am I required to do these things? Why is this all being put upon me? This is the internal disquiet of railing against the role that I'll say it gently, you've plugged yourself into. You've become something which aren't very comfortable with. And this is when the drama becomes a prison, or at least it becomes a stricture, where in a certain situation you feel you have to act a certain way, and if you don't, these unspecified things will happen. Oh, people won't like me. Who? I won't be this. I won't be that. I'll be out of place. All these things.
I'll be the bad one.
I'll be the bad one.
Because that's something that you are presented with when you're growing up. This culture, these are the cultural ways. You must do it the way we have always done it. And if you don't, you will be the bad one.
And that's very interesting, Margaret. Very interesting, because who are you? You're the bad guy in the play.
I'll be the bad one. It's like
yeah. I'll be the bad guy. I'll be the bad person.
And it's never black and white, because that's the other thing that people like to present is it's got to be black and white. You're good or you're bad, and just taking into account that good and bad are internal qualities that a person may have. So to be dictated to that. Well, we're going to call you bad if you overstep your boundary here.
Mm-hmm.
And it was much stronger in the older traditions, because it would bring upon the feeling of shame. But in the modern tradition, I don't know if shame is even a word here.
Oh, but it is. I don't think, I think perhaps the older cultures were a little more honest about it, but people get named and shamed all the time, especially online, even more anonymously and more insidiously, because the people are people. People haven't really changed. And when you transgress, now in the modern age, your transgression isn't even the person who's calling you out isn't even subject to any kind of judgment, in essence, or any kind of structure. It becomes a sort of a mob shaming. But I don't want to go too deeply into that. But I think that those impulses in culture are absolutely drivers of identity and drivers of this idea of situation. If you're born into a culture, you are handed a situation. This is where you fit in. This is where you belong. You are born to this family, so you have these rules, and you have to do these things, and or this culture, or this caste, or whatever you want to call it. These types of situations, these types of role plays, are handed to you very early, from the moment you're born, and the identification is extremely seductive. You're like, well, don't you want to be X, Y, or Z? Don't you want to be this? Don't you want to be that?
Don't you want to be included in our group?
Do you want to be good and not bad? Don't you want to be... So all these drivers, and they're all couched in terms of identity. Don't you want to be? Don't you want to, I want you to, you have to become, if you do this, you get that. It's always couched in terms of identifying you. Don't you want to be, important? Don't you want to be this? Don't you want to be that? It all comes down to, don't you want to make money? Blah, blah, blah. That's the big, don't you want to be successful and make this one proud and that one proud and do this and win this award? And before we go too far down that path, none of that is in fact an undesirable thing, or a thing that should be expunged from your awareness or your existence.
Your life.
Your life. But I wanted to not use the word life. But these ideas and these objects and these achievements and all these things are fine in and of themselves. They are part of the stage. They are part of the play. But I think you said it earlier. You have to have the internal awareness to realize it's a play. And you can turn away, and you can be an actor and then be who you really are. So you have certainly, perhaps you have a role to play in the situation. In fact, in many ways, we're here to play roles, to learn, but not to identify.
Right. When you understand that each of these situations is a learning experience, and things sometimes go your way and sometimes not.
Mm-hmm.
So when you take it into a larger picture, it's like, okay, so what am I actually seeing then? And what can be learned from this situation? Because it's a life experience. The moment of now is a life experience. So when you are observing and you're like, all right, this looks like sheer hell. Where do I actually stand in the midst of this? And not to identify with, well, you're the reason why it's all gone to pieces, or, the blame, the whole, it feels awful, but not to push that off on something else. It's like, I feel awful now because of this situation. But what needs be done right now? Because in the broader picture, there's always a next step. And sometimes the next step is to be able to wait patiently for your instruction to go and execute something.
And sometimes I'm reminded of, I forget the monk's name, but the Is That So monk. Because in the story, and you could probably reprise it better than I can, but just in general, in the story, the monk in a particular culture is accused of a heinous act. And the role he was being thrust into was someone who owed someone else a great debt, had committed a grave transgression, had wronged another family very deeply, and now he was on the hook. He was going to be shamed. He was going to be named. He was going to be made to suffer for this transgression. Okay. And at the end of the day, you're given at that exact moment a situation. Somebody knocks on your door out of the blue and basically says to you that you are the vilest scum on earth and you have done all these terrible things, and we're going to take you outside and run you through the streets on a rail. And the immediate role you're thrust into is, no, I didn't, and you're this and I'm that, and da da da, and just you're going to go through the whole litany of being plugged into the bad guy and perhaps having to fight this great existential whatever, go through this. No, and the moment of now, first of all, accepts that situation. Okay, here's some crazy thing that just walked through my front door and wants me to play a role. And the puncturing that the monk uses is this one simple phrase.
Yes.
Is that so? And then the interesting thing about the story is he accepts the situation. He says, okay, this is the situation. But his identity is not even touched by this. He's like, is that so? He said it aloud, but you don't even have to say it aloud. You can just say, okay, this crazy out of the blue situation happens, and it's all plugged in, and I'm supposed to be the bad guy, and you just go, is that so? And you say, no, in my being, I know it's not so, but I can't do anything about it right now, so for now, I will play this part. I'll do what needs to be done.
Well, he's not playing the part. What he says is, I will do what needs to be done.
Right, that's what I mean. He doesn't allow it to suck him in, but he also doesn't rail against the situation and end up fighting a chimera, fighting something which is not at all real. He just says, okay, I'll do what needs to be done, and I'll let the situation rage all around me. I don't care.
Well, he had to take care of a little one, so that's an all-encompassing task. So he did that.
Exactly. His
what is required of me now?
Right.
Mm-hmm. So you're like, okay. And the arguing, we've all been in situations where people are coming at you and they're basically telling you this is what you've done or who you are, and they've made a judgment call already. You're the bad one. You haven't done things properly. this
Right.
is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you stand there and you realize it's not going to matter what I say,
Exactly.
because there's no listening involved here.
Right.
You're facing this judge, jury, and now the executioner. And you're looking at it going, And his response to that is exactly that, just this very calm, is that so?
Right. Taking none of it in.
Right.
But also realizing that the situation itself couldn't be remedied by any action. As you said, no one was listening. There was an immediate need, a child which required caring for, and was being thrust upon him. So you could say, well, I didn't do anything wrong, and I shouldn't have this, and why are they doing this? And then you're going right down the ego path of putting yourself into the victim, or putting yourself into the I'm right and they're wrong.
Well, at that point, there was only the one role that he's the bad one, and then the other role of, he's going to fight this. And you're just sitting there, he's looking at this going, well, that's a situation, but that's not who I am.
Right.
But this is a situation, and according to who I am, appreciating life, this little one needs care. We'll do that.
Right. And so the difference between the two may seem almost indistinguishable from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
The family comes and accuses the man who did all these terrible things, and the man accepts responsibility and takes care of the child that he supposedly did this thing. But at the end of the day, it's the internal centering, heartfelt knowledge that this is not who I am. This is a situation which I will accept because I cannot change it, and that I will act as I am called upon to do for the good of an innocent, or the good of something that needs me.
I accept the now of the situation, and the now of the situation requires a little one to be taken care of. Okay, he's not accepting the whole situation as if the plague just got plunked into his lap. He's accepting the situation of the moment of now, and saying, okay, this is what needs to be done right now.
Right, and it doesn't look different. It's the attitude that you approach it with. To bring it more closer to home, and to understand that how did the monk get there? How did he come to this situation? Is prior to this, we don't know in the story, but from our own experience, prior to this, you're in the play, and you don't know you're in the play. You're identifying with everything. You're doing all the right things. You're getting the right insurances. You're doing the 401ks. You're doing all the crazy things. You're doing everything's like just and thus and so, and you have all your whatever advices and books. And then a situation comes upon you. A child is diagnosed with a terrible disease. This has happened to us. And you know that this is not... The immediate reaction, my own immediate reaction, was, how can this be? How can this be? And you fight against it. And in an egoic way, you're like, I don't deserve this. But then what broke us, I know what broke you out of immediately, and probably me later, was that the child needed us, and that our feelings, my feelings, your feelings, were not only secondary, but the acceptance of the fact that we were in pain meant nothing, because we had to understand that the child needed us to act as the situation called for in the now. So it broke us out of, very violently, broke us out of this mold. And for a while, and we wrote about this in Christopher's book, it was surreal. It was like you're in a different world. Everyone else is going around. A play is still, cymbals are crashing, the band is playing, and people are running around, and all around you things are happening as though they normally do. and you're in this odd, strange, at the moment, bubble, almost isolated, almost in a silent bubble of now. This needs to be done now. And it breaks you there. This is one way to get out. I'm not sure how the monk got out, how he became the ability to say, is that so? But in the situation that comes upon you in that moment, and you do still have a choice, if you accept it, it breaks you out of it. It breaks you out
of
the play.
The play. Thank you, because
takes your identity that you had thought you were and makes you realize that you were never those things, that those things were just a role, just a play. And it's a very violent way to get there. But we all both saw, you and I both saw, that people who would not go there, who would sit there in denial, you saw it many times.
Yes. The step into reality, because for me, the egoic aspect, the mind part that was trying to make things work all the time and make things better, had no solution, no response. It was dead silent. It was probably one of the first times in my life where that was absolutely silent. There was no internal voice instructing me to do something or not do something, or evaluating, or whispers of, well, maybe this could be done to tweak it a little better. It's like, no, this is completely out of my hands. I don't know how to deal with cancer in my child. And they're telling me that there's steps that can be taken. And that's that's the plan that's laid out. But my concern was the state of his heart and his mind and his soul. And when you are concerned with that, your heart opens up and just, okay, Lord, what does he need right now? Because you know what the plan is and what they're telling you he needs, but you need to modify all of it with where is he and what is needed right now for him. And walking that particular line, you have to remain heart true. And it's hard to explain to people what that means, because they'll just follow through with what the doctors have laid out for you. This is the way, oh, well, that's what they said. This is the way we go. And you're like, no, heart true. What is heart true for this moment? And you did that every single moment. So what you thought you knew dissipated. What you thought you knew about yourself dissipates. And all you knew internally was the drive to be present and allow God's grace to come through, because that's the only way you are going to be able to stand in that moment. People they'll give you every excuse under the sun, to collapse into a basket and give you pills so that you don't have to feel anything anymore. But that's not what was needed right now. That's the ego. You're basically taking care of your own ego while you let your child go through this trial pretty much on his own and having to deal with you in a basket. And that is a situation that was revealed to a lot of people.
Exactly, and but if we go back to that, see, and we wrote this in Christopher's book, and I'm just trying to exactly see how we got there. When this occurred, there was a breaking, and I don't think at the time we understood it. 20 years later on, when we wrote the book, we had the ability to synthesize it at that point. But at the time, it was a painful, wrenching break, as though you had passed through a door into another world. And this world, none of what you understood was true anymore. And so you're grasping for straws. This is why people stay. They try to stay with the plan. But I think both of us, perhaps you first, I would say, had the honesty, the heart level honesty to realize that what we were doing before was suddenly revealed as a play, a situation. And then we realized that even what we were in that moment was also that the rules and the plan were different, but they weren't any better. That it was just trading one egoic identity for another. We didn't have these terms at that time, but it was the feeling of falseness that had been revealed by breaking out of the mold that we had been taught to be in our whole lives, of this thing and that's right, and this is right, and do that and do this, and then you're good, and then you're good. When that broke, that shattering, we realized that the truth of it was that Christopher's life was on the line, and any amount of indulgence that we were going to indulge in would be taken away from him, that he'd be the one fueling that indulgence. And so even on both sides of that bubble, the outside where everything was this and people were like, oh, it's so terrible to be you, and then inside where it's so terrible, both of those things were roles and plays. Because we saw it on the other side too, where people would sit there and just be in total abject denial or clinging to every word that was given of the plan and saying, well, I want better percentages, that whole litany. Somehow we got to the actual pinnacle of the scintillating point of that existence, and realizing that none of it was true except the fact that we had to be there and present and do what needed to be done, whatever it was. And that's where the monk was through a different way. And that's where you have to get to be where Eckhart's talking about here. It doesn't have to be through such a terrible experience, but through that terrible experience, it was very sudden that we found ourselves in that. It was a matter of, who knows, days or weeks, where you went from, in essence, an existence where you thought you knew where everything was going to be and going to happen, and where you were coming from or where you were going to, and all the rules. And I think at one point, people around us looked at us and said, we don't know who you are anymore. And we didn't know who we were anymore. In that regard, we're like, sorry, we don't have time to be who you want us to be. There's no way that we could re-inhabit the roles. And I think it frightened people in many ways. Some came up to it, many ran away. Remember the ones who just ran away? They just vanished. The friend of this and the friends of that, and the ones who will always be there for you, and then they just vanished. Because they couldn't take the reality of it.
Right. You would have liked to have been able to have someone who could truly be a friend, but the rate of change was so fast and so absolute that it exhausted people.
It frightened them.
So
there were some that came out of the woodwork that we had never known could deal with that. And then sometimes we would find those we thought were very steadfast and true gone. Because that truly was a point of winnowing, of choosing, And if you couldn't be there, they would touch and go, or they would just vanish.
Right. It's just what happens.
Well, we've been going on. Let's take a little break and go back to the studio and have a little commercial break. And then on the other side, we'll talk more about our situation.
The wait is over. First Blood, Book 2 of the Blood series is out. Your favorite bad boy thief Dev is back, and the beautiful and deadly Trey is right there with him. She is sharp, sexy, and full of surprises. Their adventures continue as a new power arises to threaten the world. The heart of creation is under attack, and time is definitely not on their side as they battle against their enemies' undead hordes. Can they unlock the hidden power that can defeat him, or will his forces draw first blood? Get all 3 installments in the series. Book 0, It's in the Blood. Book 1, Destroyer's Blood, and the new release, Book 2, First Blood, today. Available in ebook and paperback format on Amazon, Kobo, Apple, and most other fine e-tailers. The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lyons, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. Moonstones and murder. Real murderers need a heart of stone. Meet Maggie and Mike Heartstone, parents of twin boys, entrepreneurs, and now empty nesters. Mike is retired, not by choice, from his position as chief of police in the picturesque resort town of Hamilton. And now his wife Maggie and her shop, the Cozy Crystal, are their only source of income. When a mysterious killing interrupts Hamilton's famous Springfield Park rock show, the townsfolk, the Cozy Crystal, and their lives are rocked to the core. Can Mike and Maggie figure out who is behind the murderous deeds before the town comes crashing down around them? A touch of romance, a little mayhem, and a whole lot of suspense, along with plenty of comedy and thrills galore. Get your crystal magnifying glass out. It's time for some moonstones and murder. Available on Amazon, Apple, Kobo, and other fine e-tailers in ebook and paperback. Out soon on Audible. Get your copy today.
Hello, this is Highway 59 recording artist Randy Moore, and you are listening to the ArtistFirst Radio Network.
Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. The new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lyons is Book 1 of the adventures of Devkalion, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword Betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time.
Hi, this is Amanda Gray. Check out my new book, Glimpses of Grace in Georgia, available on Westbow Press Bookstore, Barnes & Noble, and Amazon. More information can be found at my website, www.glimpsesofgraceingeorgia.com, and you are listening to the ArtistFirst Radio Network.
There is a Reaper is the story of 5-year-old Christopher Aaron and his life-changing struggle with leukemia. Winner of both the Indie Bragg Medallion as well as the reader's favorite silver medal for memoir, There is a Reaper has more than 100 Amazon book reviews and a 5-star rating. It has been described as life-changing, spiritual, a must-read. Just released on Audible and iTunes, this memoir is also available in paperback and on Amazon Kindle for only 99 cents. Get your copy of this life-changing memoir today.
Thanks for joining us on The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past shows are podcasts. You can find them at artistfirst.com. Now here they are, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Thank you very much, T-Man, and welcome back to The Situation. We've been talking tonight about Eckhart Tolle's quote number 27, which, relates very directly, I think, to it really speaks to the heart of the human condition. You can find parallels of this statement in the Enlightenment, which struck the Buddha, because in essence, in becoming aware that the life that he was living was in essence just a situation. His initial revelation, his initial sort of shock, was that there was suffering in the world. You said old age, and you saw poverty, you saw disease. He saw that the life that he had been living in was just a lie. Not only it was a lie, but it was so much removed from the quote unquote the reality of most people's situations, that it showed the lie of both of them. It showed that his pampered and isolated existence was no more than a role, a play that he had been thrust into, and that he was able to transition and realize that in breaking and shattering that illusion, that he realized that all of it was an illusion, that all life is suffering was also an illusion. But it was the shattering of his sort of paradigm that started his journey.
Well, it's when he had gotten to that third image of what his father was trying to prevent him to see, and it was death.
Mm-hmm.
Death being the ultimate equalizer.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. Death is death. So that, he said, well, I'm not going to participate with any of this. I want to understand what is going on in this moment. If there is such a thing as death, because he was never introduced to it, then what is this death and life?
Exactly. He was given, he was sheltered for whatever purpose. Let's say that his parents were trying to keep the world away from him. But it was a futile thing, and it's an allegory in many ways, because life, the situation that will be handed, that you are born into, or that you are living at the current time, if you identify with it, seems as though it is all. Just as the ego seems as though it is all, rather than when it is this tiny little talkative portion of your being. It tries to say that I am everything. The little I, the ego I, is everything. Just as the situation, what you are, what environment you were born into, is seductive in telling you, well, this is everything. This is the whole world. This room, this culture, this country, this is who you are. You belong in this role. And then you notice that when people get annoyed at you or angry at you or start to reject you, is when you're breaking their paradigm, when you're not acting the way that you're supposed to act in your role. And if it's not a sort of an acceptable way of transitioning, well, you're just growing up or something, but there's always this resistance to any sort of acting out of role, And the reason being is that you're making them uncomfortable in their dream, in their acceptance of the play. Their identity is being threatened by you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And, when you have a shattering, like what happened to us and what happens to many people, where you're thrust into such a different part of a situation, people become afraid. They run away from you. They reject you. They deny you. They don't even want to witness you. They don't even want to say, I'm here for you. And it takes many, many different forms. Another situation which happened to us is a good friend of yours died very suddenly. And that night, at 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning, we were called to her side, basically to her deathbed, but she had already passed, by her family. And that was a situation that many people would have said, well, I can't. Well, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm not going. All the rejection excuses were there. What did we do? We got up. We got in our car in practically our pajamas. We drove, half an hour in the freezing cold to sit by this person's side and in essence be a witness. No more. We were there for nothing more than to witness and it's what had to be done in that situation. Because at some level, we had already been completely broken out. This was long after Christopher had passed. And we understood that what comes into your life doesn't identify you. But yet you do have something that needs to be done. If it comes to you and you say, there's nothing I can do, you have to accept it. But if it comes to you and somebody says, I need you, and you know in your heart that that's not a, I need you to do this. No, it's a heartfelt, I need you. You respond to that call because you're no longer living for yourself or for your little I or for your, I have to get up tomorrow and I don't know. No. There's a giant column of grace that's flowing down from source. And the finger of God in one regard is going down and touching you and saying, Samuel, you're getting the call. And you have to say, yes, Lord, I'm here. What do you need me to do?
Yeah. Is it I, Lord?
Is it I, Lord? And so you say, and when you don't even say, is it I? You say, yes, Lord. What do you need me to do? And you get up out of your warm bed and you get into your cold car and you go. And it's the same thing that once you've broken out and you realize that it's all just a situation, it's all just a play, then you understand that each moment of your existence, you may be called to do something, or you may not be. And so you cherish the moments of inaction because you're just being. And then you have to also cherish the moments of action because as you're called, you're now a touch point for source to channel what needs be done. You're not just a player. You're not just a chessboard, a chess man on a chessboard. You are being asked to fulfill a destined role. You're not the only one, but you're being asked. I need you, like Uncle Sam, but it's more like God. I need you to do this now. And you do it all the time. You open your heart. You go very recently to a situation which you just went to. You're called into a situation where there's a million excuses. I don't know. I got this. I got that. No. You're like, they need me. I got to go. And I'm like, because you tell me these things, I say, I understand. I know you have to go. And you go, and you're there, and you witness. And it's such a very difficult and yet such a very essential part of the human being to witness.
Yes, many of us are here to be present for someone's situation, to be able to witness exactly what they're doing and the choices that are made. And sometimes you're just there as a reminder that, this is a play, right?
Mm.
You have other parts of you that need to be considered. Other aspects, other choices. Just make space and make the decision aware of all your choices. The decision is still yours. I'm just here to remind you of what your options are and what is real, as opposed to focusing only on what you think your choices are.
Yeah, as Eckhart says, the mind stuff. I mean, you do this all the time since I've known you, but it's become more and more essential, where the whispering, there's a small, quiet voice which you have to make space for, which tells you when you need to speak. And through your example and through my own development, I've come to be able to do this in some small regard as well. But you have it in spades, where you see a person. This would happen in the Rock and Gem all the time. They would come in, and in a few short sentences, you pierce to the root of what they need. They understand that here is a heart that's open and listening, and then their story comes out, their situation, and then you're able to say to them, "I hear and witness you. I truly hear you. I understand you. I witness you.
I am with you in your agony."
And able to show them that this is a passing thing, that it isn't, your situation is not you. You witness the being, and you say to them, without, in so many words, it happened to me the other day. You witness the being, and in so many words you say, "I understand," as few others can, and say to them that that what has happened to you has given you a unique way, a unique experience, which few others can understand. And in this moment you're in agony, but it's not that it's a passing thing, but it is a passing thing. It is something that will come into your life. You have to understand, you have to live in, you have to act when you can act, accept what you have to accept, and then understand that you're now greater, vaster. You're into a being state which others are not in. You have to almost appreciate the breaking and the growing, like every seed. When the seed husk breaks, there's pain, but yet you grow. So yes, this whispering, this heart voice which you hear, people know it, and then they come to you when they can speak to no others. They find those who are open to speak to, and your heart voice tells you this one needs you. There's no sign on them, but you can feel it immediately, and then you have the choice. You can say, you have the choice to use the words, and you just use the words that come to you. Don't think about them. Don't say, "I'll say this to them," and then they'll say that. You say, "Oh," and the word that you use doesn't actually matter. It's the energy that you project. I'm open to hear you. I'm here as a witness. That they feel instantly, and then they have to just trust you just the tiniest little bit. They'll give you the tiniest little clue. You give them back this little trust, and boom, you're there where you need to be.
Right. It's a heartfelt rightness. I don't know how else to explain it. It is heart true. There's a resonance to truth, and when someone is in that pain, and I've known a lot of moms who have lost their children, and this pain, are no words for this kind of pain. Your heart is more than broken, it's shattered. But you can't put words to it, and people around you, sometimes it's family, they kind of expect you to, you'll get over it. You have other kids, or you can have another child. And they're trying to be consoling, helpful, but they haven't even thought about it for 5 seconds before they open their mouth. The truth is, the reality is far more vast, and the value that you put on to someone's life cannot be summed up so simply. The loss of someone whom you love dearly and are taken care of is devastating.
It is.
And I believe we've reached the end of our hour.
That's the situation. But let me just say one last thing. The whisperings of that heart, true voice, come, and they give you the ability to understand that you're not your situation, but you are your being.
You are.
And,
I am.
And I am Michael Lyons.
And I am Margaret. And thank you for listening.